It started with a lie, not a big one, not the kind that comes crashing through your front door with sirens blaring. No, this lie was quiet, polished, delivered with a smile and a handshake. It felt like trust. It sounded like opportunity. But it was a trap. The camera would pan in on a dimly lit apartment in Austin. A man sits alone, coffee untouched, watching a live stream on his laptop. A sleek stage. Applause. A charismatic woman stands center stage, announcing a revolutionary AI that will change the financial world. She says it was built by her team. She says it was her vision. He blinks. He built that code. Every sleepless night. Every version. Every bug he crushed in silence. It was all his. But no one's saying his name. Not once. His phone vibrates. Notifications roll in. Former co-workers congratulating the launch. He doesn't respond. He just rewinds the stream again and again, watching her smile as the world cheers for something he birthed and she stole. You see, this isn't a story about a genius who made millions or a dreamer who never gave up. It's not even about revenge. This is a story about silence, the kind you fall into when everything you believed in collapses, the kind you choose when speaking out means nothing, the kind that doesn't scream but echoes. So if you've ever had something taken from you, your voice, your work, your worth, then sit down, because this story might be yours too. He wasn't born into power. There were no trust funds, no Ivy League springboards, no family dinners where they talked about IPOs and venture rounds. Just a one-bedroom rental, a second-hand desktop, and a mother who worked 2 jobs to keep the lights on. But what he lacked in pedigree, he made up for in precision. Code wasn't just logic, it was escape. While other kids were chasing trends, he was teaching himself Python from stolen Wi-Fi behind a laundromat. Algorithms made sense, people didn't. So when he finally landed that job in Austin, at a rising tech startup with big promises and bigger dreams, it felt like gravity had finally given him a break. Open floor plans, kombucha on tap, late-night brainstorming under neon lights. It wasn't just a company, it was a belief system, the kind that tells you, if you work hard enough, you'll rise. He bought in. Every line of code he wrote felt like a brick in something bigger. He wasn't just an employee, he was building the future. And when the founder, the glowing media-trained powerhouse who ran the place, looked him in the eye and said, "You're not just another engineer, you're a builder," he believed her. Because why wouldn't he? She had built a brand on empowerment, disruption, and trust. And he was just hungry enough to confuse all that with truth. It started with a whisper of an idea, small, quiet, almost embarrassing to say out loud. An AI that could read financial markets like a human reads emotion. Not just raw data, but patterns, sentiment, behavior, predictive intuition, digitized. Most people thought it was impossible. Even the company's data team laughed when he brought it up. But he wasn't most people. He didn't see noise. He saw signals. So he built it. Not in boardroom meetings, not during scheduled sprints. No, this was his 2 a.m. project. After the lights dimmed, after Slack went quiet, just him, a blinking cursor, and an obsession he couldn't turn off. Version 1 was messy, ugly even, but it felt alive. By month 3, it was running clean projections across 6 sectors. By month 6, it was beating market indexes in simulated trades. That's when she noticed. She called it game-changing, said it could be the heart of the company's future, and for a moment, just one. He believed he was about to become more than an engineer, a co-founder, a partner. She didn't ask him to hand it over, not directly. She wrapped it in something softer. Let's make it official. Protect the IP. Get you on the core roadmap. Flattered, he nodded. He didn't know he was handing over a loaded weapon with his name scratched off the side. Because sometimes, the thing you build to free yourself becomes the thing that buries you. It didn't look like betrayal. It looked like paperwork. One Tuesday afternoon, tucked between back-to-back meetings and lukewarm coffee, HR slid a few documents across the desk. Smiling, casual. Just some standard updates, legal stuff, company IP, NDAS, compliance. Everyone's signing them this week. The stack wasn't thick, no red flags, no bold letters screaming danger. Just contracts dressed in corporate politeness. And in a startup world where time is currency and trust is gospel. Reading the fine print feels almost rude. So he signed, initials here, signature there, a nod, a thank you, and back to his desk, where the code was waiting. He didn't know that in that stack of paper was a clause, buried under dense language and bullet points, that quietly transferred full ownership of all work, side projects, and intellectual property to the company. Retroactively, irrevocably. It wasn't an accident. It was a net, woven long before he even realized he was swimming into it. And the worst part? He would still go home that night, feeling like he was winning, that the future he was building was finally solidifying, that all the nights he gave up, the birthdays he missed, the anxiety attacks he ignored, were finally paying off. But across town, in a glass office far above his pay grade, someone else was preparing to cash in. And she didn't need to steal his code, because he'd just handed it to her, with a pen and a hopeful smile. It was supposed to be a quiet Friday, just a handful of team leads in a cramped conference room, coffee-stained whiteboard in the back, projector flickering to life. No fanfare, no cameras, just a live demo, internal only. The AI was ready to speak for itself. Within seconds, jaws tightened, predictions loaded in real time, industry swings, social sentiment shifts, trade behaviors that felt eerily human. One lead muttered, "How the hell is it doing this?" Another tapped furiously at their keyboard, cross-checking against market data. It wasn't just working, it was seeing. At the end, there was silence, not awkward, reverent. Like the room collectively understood they weren't just looking at a product. They were staring at a gold mine. Someone clapped, then another. She walked in last, smiling, calm, unfazed, as if she already knew the outcome. "Impressive," she said, pausing at the screen. This changes everything." The next week blurred. Meetings behind closed doors. VCs dropping by unannounced. A sudden hush that swept through the office, like everyone had been given a memo he hadn't read. And then something shifted. He wasn't being invited to strategy calls anymore. Feedback loops went silent. The roadmap he helped build was suddenly being rewritten, without him in the room. At first, he brushed it off, thought maybe it was just growing pains. But somewhere, deep in his gut, a whisper. Not the voice of paranoia, the voice that once helped him write brilliant code. Something's wrong. He found out through Twitter. Not an invite, not an internal email, not even a casual hallway mention. Just a photo, perfectly lit, filtered, already going viral. A massive LED screen behind a stage, glowing in a shade of blue he helped pick 6 months ago. A bold new product name stretched across it like a battle flag. Sentience AI, Investing Reimagined. Her smile was front and center, standing at the edge of a sleek platform, mic in hand, surrounded by flashing cameras and a standing ovation. He froze. This was his launch, his architecture, his algorithms, his vision, the one he'd nurtured in silence, line by fragile line, through crashes and caffeine and breakdowns that no one ever saw. And now it was out there, market ready, investor backed, and completely scrubbed of his name. He scrolled faster, hoping it was a mistake. Maybe he missed a message. Maybe someone tagged him or mentioned him in the press release. Nothing. And then the photo that broke him. Her, flanked by the executive team, holding champagne glasses, smiling like they'd just discovered fire. He sat there, still in yesterday's clothes, a cold sandwich on the desk beside him, blinking at a world that had moved on without him. Not forgotten, erased. That's when it hit him. Not just the betrayal, but the setup. The meetings he missed, the calls he wasn't on, the questions no one answered. It wasn't accidental. It was designed. They hadn't launched a product. They'd launched his silence. And the worst part? It worked. He didn't even call, just typed out a short message, hands shaking as he stared at the blinking cursor. Kept it calm, polite, too polite. Hey, just saw the launch. Can we talk? No reply for hours. When her response finally came, it was one line. You should check your contract. That was it. No, thank you. No, sorry. No, let's talk. Just a digital shrug wrapped in legal steel. He read it again and again until the words started to blur. Check your contract. The one they slipped across his desk months ago, buried under buzzwords and boilerplate. The one he signed with blind trust and zero questions. He opened it, scanned page after page until he found it. Clause 14.4. Any and all work created during employment, whether inside or outside designated hours, shall be considered sole property of the company. There it was, black and white, not theft, not fraud, ownership, legal, absolute. His heart didn't race. It sank, deep, like it already knew. There was no fighting this, not in court, not in the press, not even in conversation. He texted her again, something raw, something human. You said this was ours. The 3 dots appeared, paused, vanished. Then, one final reply. This is bigger than you. I had to protect it. That's when it all cracked. Because it wasn't just the product she'd stolen, it was the belief that they were building something together. The illusion that loyalty was mutual, that being early stage meant being part of something sacred. But loyalty, it turns out, is easy to sell when it was never yours to begin with. The next morning felt off. He showed up to the office like any other day. Same badge, same elevator music, same front desk nod, but the looks were different. Eyes darted away. Conversations ended the moment he walked by. Slack channels, quiet. Emails, dry. Smiles, missing. By lunch, his access to the main repo had been revoked. No explanation. Just a blinking permission denied where his code used to live. Then came the meeting request. HR 3 p.m. They didn't waste time. Due to concerns around data integrity and recent breaches of internal protocol, we're placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately. What breaches? What protocol? No answers. Just a manila folder, a neutral tone, security waiting outside the glass wall. They took his laptop, his badge, even made him sign something on the way out, ironically, for IP protection. And just like that, the building he helped build spit him out like gum off the bottom of its polished boot. It wasn't just professional exile, it was social erasure. Calls went unanswered, texts left unread. Coworkers who once pulled all-nighters beside him suddenly had amnesia. Everyone was sorry, but couldn't get involved. There were rumors that he leaked internal prototypes, that he went rogue, that he tried to sabotage the launch. A lie moves faster than truth, especially when it's convenient. But the final cut wasn't corporate. It came quietly, over takeout and silence. She, Mia, the one who knew every version of the code before it had a name, looked across the kitchen table and said, "I need to think about my future too." She chose the stock options. He chose the door. That night, the apartment felt colder, not because it was winter, but because for the first time he realized he had nothing left they could take, and that was the beginning of something they couldn't control. He didn't go out that night, didn't drink, didn't rage, didn't cry. He just sat there, in the dark, screen glowing, in a room that now felt too big. And after hours of silence, he opened a folder no one knew existed. Tachyon V0.1, the other version. Rougher, raw, unstable, but unfiltered. It wasn't the polished demo he showed the team. It was the skeleton underneath. Faster, riskier, untethered by corporate approval or code audits. Built not to impress, but to understand. It had lived offline, on a dusty old backup drive, tucked under his bed. Untouched since the night he almost deleted it, out of fear it was too dangerous. A version of his creation that actually scared him. Now, it felt like a lifeline. Not for redemption, not even revenge. Just for one thing, truth. He ran it once, just to see if it still worked. And the way it pulsed across his screen, like a nervous system waking up, it reminded him this code was never theirs. It had never belonged to the logo on the office wall, or the investors in pressed suits, or the founder with her perfect pitch deck. It had always belonged to him. And now? There were no NDAs, no contracts, no rules. Just him, the code, and the silence between them. They'd taken everything else, but this they forgot to steal. He didn't post about what happened, didn't rant online, didn't lawyer up. The world loves a victim, but forgets them just as quickly. So he disappeared. Rented a tiny room above a used bookstore across the river. No desk, no fridge. Just a mattress, a secondhand monitor, and a router that barely held a signal. The city buzzed beneath him. Startups launching, people networking, deals being inked on rooftop bars. He didn't want any of it. Every day he walked to a local cafe where no one knew his name, took orders, wiped tables, listened. And every night he came home, pulled the blackout curtains, and booted up what he called his second life. He wasn't coding a product now. He was sculpting a weapon, not of destruction, but of precision. The AI wasn't flashy anymore. No UX, no dashboards, just data streams, raw, volatile, intimate. He fed it real-world behavior, social movements, trading anomalies, taught it not just to track patterns, but to bend them, nudge the invisible levers just slightly, enough to create hesitation, doubt, cracks. He called it whisper. It didn't roar. It suggested. And suggestion, in the right markets, at the right time, could trigger dominoes. He wasn't trying to crash anything. Not yet. But he wanted them to feel it. That edge of paranoia. The weight of a flaw they couldn't quite detect. Because the thing about code? If you write it with enough truth, You don't need to shout. Just let it whisper in the right ears. At first, no one noticed. A misprediction here, a delayed reaction there. Nothing major, just tiny blips in sentient AI's projections. The kind of statistical noise most analysts would ignore. But the ones who mattered, they felt it. Because in the world of high finance, confidence is everything. You don't need to prove the algorithm is broken. Just make someone believe it might be. Whisper began making micro adjustments, barely there nudges in digital conversations, sentiment scoring anomalies, fluctuations in public datasets, false positives in forums, quiet patterns injected into trend graphs only a machine would notice. And the machine did. One by one, sentient AI's forecasts started trailing behind reality. By milliseconds at first, then seconds, then entire trend windows. Hedge fund managers whispered in back channels. Is it just us? Did the model change? Has it lost edge? Then the media picked it up. A tiny finance blog ran a headline. The rise and stall of sentience, AI. Just a question mark. But it was enough. Investor confidence wavered. Key clients paused rollouts. One early adopter pulled funding, citing model uncertainty. Internally, the team scrambled. Engineers patched, retested, rebooted. Nothing worked because they were trying to fix a system that didn't know it was being played. They'd built their kingdom on data. Real-time, predictive, untouchable. But now, every decision they made was based on a stream being whispered to by the very person they erased. And the higher they tried to climb, the more they didn't realize the floor beneath them was already cracking. He didn't send an email, didn't leave a trail, just a cold, untraceable packet, encrypted, anonymous, dropped into a private tip line buried deep in a hedge fund's cyber intel channel. No name, no threats, just data, not stolen files, not code dumps, just a series of time-stamped inconsistencies, prediction drift, behavioral mismatches, public API signals. That, when stitched together, whispered one thing. Sentience AI isn't stable. The kind of flaw you don't need proof for. Because in high finance, the scent of risk is enough to make wolves circle. And they did. Within 72 hours, the rival firm initiated a quiet audit. Not public, not loud, just questions. Pushed through lawyers, analysts, compliance channels, controlled chaos. By the time it reached the boardroom, the original creator was already gone from the narrative. But his fingerprints were everywhere, not in the data, in the doubt. In the silence after every answer the company couldn't quite explain. In the way the CTO's voice cracked during investor briefings. In the internal Slack messages flagged for unusual tone. It wasn't a hack. It wasn't sabotage. It was a whisper. Dropped into the right room at the right moment. And the wolves? They don't ask who bled first. They just start tearing. It didn't explode. It unraveled. One headline at a time. One investor call. One unexpected clarification request from regulators. Nothing dramatic. Just the slow peeling back of a company that had wrapped itself in hype and silence. First came the article. A quiet piece in Tech Ledger Weekly, penned by a writer known for never guessing, only confirming. It asked a simple question. Was sentience AI built on unstable foundations? No sources named, no accusations. Just timelines, gaps, discrepancies, red flags that only mattered when seen together. Then came the screenshots, internal messages, meeting notes, audit reports with phrases like inconclusive reliability, unverifiable core logic. the kind of documents that don't scream scandal, but hum it beneath the surface. The board panicked. Clients pulled back. The valuation, once north of $500 million, started bleeding zeros by the week. And her? The face of it all? She stood on stage again. But this time, no spotlight, no standing ovation, just harsh lighting and colder questions. Did you write the core algorithm yourself? Why wasn't the lead engineer publicly acknowledged? Are you aware of the whistleblower reports? She didn't stutter, not once. But in her eyes, the confidence was cracked. The empire she built on ambition, trust, and polish was coming apart at the seams. Not because someone kicked the door in, but because the foundation had been hollow the whole time. And now, there was nothing left to hold it up. The email came late. No subject line, just a logo. Sleek, minimalist. One of the big ones. A firm whose name whispered power in Silicon Valley hallways. But this was direct. They wanted to meet. Quietly, privately. Said they'd followed his disappearance with interest. Said they respected what he'd built. Not just the code, the silence, the control, the message. He walked into their downtown office like a ghost. Polished glass walls, handshakes that felt too soft. And across from him, a young exec in a sharp suit and an even sharper smile. We're not here to ask questions about the past, she said. We're here to talk about your future. The offer was clean. Millions in equity. Full autonomy. Build whatever he wanted. No NDAs. No pitch decks. No public launches until he said so. Everything he never got. Everything they never gave him. For a moment, the air shifted. It could all be his. Not stolen, not buried, not broken. Just his. But something in him didn't move. Not pride, not fear, just stillness. He looked around at the polished surfaces, the manicured success, the quiet hum of people chasing a dream that never felt like it was made for him. Then he smiled, stood up. I appreciate it, truly. A pause. But I'm not building for them anymore. And just like that, he walked out. No drama, no headlines, only peace. It had been months since he stopped checking over his shoulder. The cafe became a rhythm, a routine, simpler than code. Pour, wipe, smile. No expectations, no performance reviews, no backroom deals, just the quiet hum of people passing through, trying to forget whatever haunted them outside those glass doors. Then, one afternoon, she walked in. No warning, no soundtrack, just the creak of the door, and a name called out that he hadn't heard in a voice like that in a long time. She didn't recognize him at first. Not with the apron, not behind the counter, but he saw it, that second blink, the pause, the way her fingers tightened around the phone in her hand. She ordered something simple, vanilla latte, extra foam, like old times, and waited, silently, while he worked. When he handed her the cup, their eyes met. Just long enough to say everything their mouths couldn't. She sat down in the far corner, didn't leave, just waited. And after a while, he joined her. Not the pitch decks, not the conferences, not the millions that turned to ashes. Just knowing that the thing they tried to control, the thing they weaponized and wrapped in contracts, had found a way to escape and do something good without needing his name on it. You won't find his name in any headline, not in the case studies, not in the funding rounds, not in the LinkedIn threads about disruption and grit and hustle. But his fingerprints, they're still there, etched into the cracks of a system that tried to swallow him whole. And maybe that's the point. Not every story ends with a comeback. Some just end, quietly, with dignity, with no parade, no vengeance, no microphone, just truth. Because the hardest part of being betrayed isn't what they take from you, it's realizing you never meant anything to them in the first place. And yet, you still meant something. To yourself, to the thing you made, to the version of you that stayed up all night believing in something no one else could see. That matters. So if you're out there, if you've ever been burned, cut out, erased, if you've ever poured your soul into something just to watch someone else sell it, brand it, launch it like you were never there, you're not alone. And this story, it was never just about code. It's about every builder who got left behind, every voice that went quiet because it got tired of screaming into the void, every idea stolen in broad daylight and buried under someone else's name. But silence isn't weakness. Sometimes it's control. Sometimes it's peace. And sometimes it's the only way to survive. So if this story hit you in the chest, if it felt like something you've lived, drop a comment, share your version, or just sit with it, because not everything needs a reaction. But if you're still listening, still here, subscribe. There are more stories like this one, louder, quieter, and all of them true.